Okay, so Professor Rich decided to make a video about objectivism. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty excited when I saw the video posted because Professor Rich usually researches his videos very thoroughly, and he makes good counter arguments. Even if I disagree with him, he makes a logical and reasonable counter argument against it. However, he did not do that in this video. He essentially in this video, he said he oversimplified objectivism, but what he actually did was build a gigantic straw man against objectivism. He never actually stated what objectivism actually is. He just basically read Virtue of Selfishness and was like, oh, if everybody's selfish, then that means they'll cheat on our wives and screw each other over, and yada yada yada. And it was basically a gigantic straw man. So in this video, I'm going to actually explain objectivism, and then I'm going to tell you some examples of how it works, and then I'm going to tell you why it doesn't work and why I'm not an objectivist. So you'll be able to reasonably argue against objectivists. Objectivism is an ideology that's attributed to the author Ayn Rand. Now, Ayn Rand's books basically tried to make the moral case for capitalism. Ayn Rand believed that the moral case for capitalism revolved around the idea that there's virtue in selfishness. She called this the virtue of selfishness. Seems to fit. Now, Ayn Rand believed that profit is selfish, but she also believed that the only way to make profit within the free market is to serve your fellow man. You have to provide people with a good or service that they actually want and convince them voluntarily to buy it from you. This is basically the idea behind the virtue of selfishness. That if I pursue my rational self-interest, my desire to make as much profit as possible, and I do make as much profit as I possibly can, then I end up serving, by accident, my fellow man. I provide people with goods and services that they actually want, even though my only motivation was to enrich myself, because the only way I could enrich myself is to provide goods and services that people actually want in the free market. That's basically the moral argument for capitalism. To give you a practical example, when you go to the store and you buy anything, let's say you're buying a TV, you pick out the TV you want, you walk up to the cashier, you pay the cashier takes the money because she wants the money more than the TV, you take the TV because you want the TV more than the money. Both of you say thank you because both of your lives have been improved by this transaction. Now, the store owner made profit, but the store owner doesn't care about you. But just by his desire to enrich himself, he had to make a TV, he had to put the TV on display, he had to help you pick it out because you help him by buying it. So he made your life better, you made his life better. That's basically the morality of capitalism. You could take this to any major product that was invented in the free market. The automobile. Henry Ford could have been the greediest man in the world. Didn't really matter because in order to make a lot of money selling cars, he had to make something that you wanted, which was the car. He had to make sure it was safe enough for you to drive. He had to make sure that you really wanted it, that it was better than the old way of traveling, which was horse and buggy. He had to do all this. He had to satisfy your need in order to enrich himself. Now, a lot of you are thinking that I'm making an unsound argument at the moment, because a lot of people who seek profit over anything else will attempt to defraud their customers. Now, Ayn Rand believed that you can only defraud somebody for so long. That if you sold somebody a bad product, something that they didn't like, and then you might make some short-term profit, but eventually free people in the free market sharing information freely, because I like to say free, would realize what you were doing, you would get a bad reputation, and nobody would buy anything from you ever. Now, in Ayn Rand's day, this was actually not very practical, because if I was running a scam and then I moved to another state and the best way to communicate back then was fucking by telephone, you didn't know anybody over there, or by fucking letter, you didn't know anybody over there. There was no way for the free market to punish me. As long as I made enough money to have a profit and move on to the next state or the next area and the next region or whatever, then I could keep running my scam. Now today we actually have mechanisms to address people who are bad actors in the free market, mechanisms that we didn't have before. A great example of this would be the internet. Now, it used to be that the roadside motels and hotels gave you the most shittiest service ever. But you didn't realize that because when you pull into a roadside motel, you pull in, you pay the clerk, you go into the room, you realize the room is a piece of crap, but you already paid the clerk. So you have to stay there. Now, the motel or hotel doesn't really care what you think about the room, because most people who stay in those roadside motels only stay there once anyway. They have no incentive to please you. But what's actually happening now in the future with the evolving technology and the creation of websites like Yelp is people are able to post consumer reviews. Now, the free market depends a lot on the free flow of information. So these consumer reviews are actually making Rand's philosophy more possible today than they were back then. Because today, people can go look up what your restaurant's done in the past. They can go see, they can share the information. And a lot of these roadside restaurants, they're going out of business now. This is an idea of what you call it. This is a Rand principle or an objectivist principle, that you can't defraud people for too long, because you're going to get a bad reputation and your ass is going to get shut down. Now, that's an idea of how her philosophy works. Now, I promise to tell you guys how it doesn't work and how to argue against it. Okay, so now I'm going to explain how to argue against objectivists. Now, you have a buyer and a seller. The seller's trying to pursue his profit by serving the buyer's needs. In this instance, we'll call them a power company and you. Now, you want power because it improves your life, it cools your home, heats your home, allows you to make YouTube video responses to other videos, whatever you use your power for. The coal company wants your money because they want profit and they're pursuing their rational self-interest. Both of you benefit from the transaction, which is great. But the coal power plant has a runoff that leads to a river that goes downstream about 2 states and pollutes the water supply of some town you never heard of. This is called an externality of the market. You see, neither the buyer nor the seller are paying for the polluted water in fucking 2 states over. In fact, that cost is passed on to a third party. And without a government system, either of regulation by an agency called the EPA or a court system where you could sue the coal company after the fact, there is no adequate way to really address that fucking problem, the problem of externalities. So the market, this is where the idea of rational self-interest, the virtue of selfishness, actually falls apart. Is because when you have these externalities, you need a system for that third party to redress their grievances. That doesn't exist in the voluntarist or objectivist society. You don't have to build a straw man to an argument that you don't like. You can just rationally take their argument, you could rationally, clearly state their position, make sure they agree with their position, and then point out the flaws. I don't know why Professor Rich didn't do that. I hope this video did it. This is actually how you fucking argue against objectivism. I'm Shaw90, TYT Nation. Subscribe to Professor Rich too. He's a badass, but he's totally wrong on this one. That's it. Oh, and P.S. For some reason, Professor Rich decided to make Paul Ryan the symbol of objectivism. Probably because Paul Ryan's the VP, and that way if you're a Democrat, you'll be like, I don't like objectivism. But Paul Ryan's not an objectivist. Paul Ryan's not a voluntarist. Paul Ryan doesn't fucking practice the ideas of Ayn Rand. Paul Ryan is a crony capitalist. If you read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, the protagonist is Dagny Taggart. The antagonists are crony capitalists and the government that allows crony capitalism to exist. That's it. Dagny Taggart hates these people that rely on government contracts and government welfare. She would rather compete and fucking win in the free market, a system based on voluntary consent. That is like her whole message. She hates crony capitalists. Paul Ryan is a crony capitalist. He voted for the bailout. End of discussion.